Yeah. Go to those Silicon Valley tech parties, huh?
And then very shortly after meeting him and his other co-founders from Viaweb, kind of the four of them decided, let's do YC.
Okay.
Let's actually sit down and let's help other startup founders achieve their dreams with guidance, with money, with a network of things that can help people succeed. And that was in 2005, I want to say.
Co-founded 2005.
Yeah.
Startup Accelerator that has since become one of the most successful and influential in Silicon Valley, helping launch companies such as, and we went through this earlier, Airbnb, Dropbox, Reddit, Instacart, DoorDash, Stripe, Twitch, amongst many others.
That's right. Yeah, the 2005. All right, we are back at it.
What's up, y'all? How y'all doing?
Another week.
Yes, another week with this Founders Drive, the Super Secret Founders Drive.
That's right.
No, this is not the Super Secret Founders Drive. This is just the Founders Drive.
Where can they find the Super Secret?
Oh, you can find the Super Secret Founders Drive on Constance, where we go more in depth with some of this material.
That's right.
And we talk a little bit more practically about some of the things that we're talking about on this episode right here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. But yes, why don't we start with some Constance updates?
As usual, Constance, the place where you can make your first dollar online. Yeah. So this week we actually published a few different updates for bookings. So just to give you guys a little bit more clarity on who's booking you, what they're booking you for, when that is, and all that fun stuff, just to make it just easier to sort through all of those bookings.
1% better every time.
Yeah.
1% better. But yes, we normally push our updates out weekly. And for those that are unaware of what Constance is, Jake, you hit on that. It's a place where you can make your first dollar online.
Yeah.
But it's also a place where you can organize your ideas and sort your ideas, so that way you can have something to make your first dollar online. We focus on digital products and helping people transition from traditional work and explore some of these new areas where you can generate income. Because, I mean, when you look around at the world today, so many things are changing.
Oh, yeah.
More and more people are either getting displaced by technological changes, automation, and if that sounds like you, then head over to constance.com. We have a pretty long video on there that walks through a step-by-step process on how to make money online, so we don't have to get into the weeds there. But you can find that on Constance, and then from there, there's tools available. You don't have to take the tools. We just make it very, 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 very easy for you to get started, and we'd love to grow with you. So if you want to invest in your interests, if you want to profit from passions, and if you want to monetize the things that are already inside of your mind, then check it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. I love starting every episode like this, just because it reminds everybody the journey that we're on, and then we get to talk about the journey that somebody else is on and what inspires us.
It's layers, man.
Exactly.
Layers. Like, we're on this journey. This is our founder's drive, but we're also studying other people's drives, and we're also, gets kind of meta because we're also
driving.
I talked to some friends, I shared it with them. They're like, oh, they're actually driving. I'm like, yes, man.
Yeah, this isn't a trailer. This isn't like a fake thing where they do like the car karaoke where somebody else is driving. I'm just like, no, if I turn, the car's turning.
Right, exactly. And so there's that layer, but then on top of that, we're also showing people that when you dive into your interests, for us it's business, for us it's founders, what other people are doing, and you share that, then you can create a platform and a pathway for monetization. And we use our products to host some of these things. And so, yeah, man, there's a lot of layers that we have here, and I love revisiting that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, man.
But this week, who are we talking about this week?
We're talking about the OG PG Paul Graham. We're talking about Paul Graham, y'all.
Graham.
Yes, we're talking about Paul Graham. He is kind of in behind the scenes to, I think, most people.
Yeah, I think so.
But in the tech startup world, he's a legend. Right. And he's a legend because he founded Y Combinator, YC, the premier startup accelerator in the world, really.
Yeah, as of right now,
Yeah.
the best in the world, I think,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of their returns and just like definitely the best in terms of their legacy and the
Yeah.
amount of people and companies that have come out of that
Mhm.
accelerator program, which an accelerator program is just basically giving startups the ability to access to people with knowledge and money
Mhm.
to actually make their idea a real thing.
Yeah. So they practically they help with things like
Operations, legal.
marketing, product market fit,
Yep.
all of these different things. And they're based out of San Francisco. They're responsible for working with some of the most prominent companies in the world right now.
That you have heard of.
Yes. So Airbnb,
Mhm.
DoorDash, Dropbox,
Reddit.
Stripe. These are all products of Y Combinator. And so basically they all ended up at Y Combinator at a very early stage.
Mhm.
They had their idea refined, guidance there. Like they have office hours pretty regularly.
Yep.
And this all culminates in a demo day where after going through this program, and they have four of these programs, or they have these programs 4 times a year, but after going through this program you end up presenting to a larger group of investors, and then the rest is usually history. So
Yep.
Y Combinator's definitely carved its space in the startup lore, and it's also aided a lot of people, and it's primarily backed on the vision of Paul Graham and the initial founders. One of them is his current wife, but then there's another one who's his like longtime partner. I think it's Roger something. Roger
There
Moore.
are 2 longtime partners that he was we really wanted to get back into business with after some of his other business ventures.
Yeah, so why don't we like run it back a little bit?
Yeah, just like what started it, because you're right, like all of that stuff is kind of why we're talking about Paul Graham.
Mm-hmm.
And so like what made Paul Graham Paul Graham?
What made Paul Graham Paul Graham? Well, he was born in 1964 in England.
Okay.
I'm not as familiar with his early life. Maybe that's something that you've done a little bit more digging on.
So the actual like early life,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything like notable until you hit 13.
Until you hit 13.
Because
what happened at 13?
There's this story or recall that he has of hitting the age of 13, and consciously he remembers asking himself, like, why am I wasting my holidays? Like, why, like, I'm on summer break or I have a little bit of time off at school and all the other kids are watching TV or outside playing tag or whatever, and he can consciously remember asking himself, why am I wasting my time doing this stuff?
Get an early life crisis.
Kinda, yeah. Which is like, I don't know. I think I've seen some of those happen every now and then, especially on Twitter. You'll see 13, 14-year-olds getting funding by, Andreessen Horowitz or something else happening at a very young age. But yeah, that's I think the very first starting point in terms of early age for Paul, which is that at 13 he was like, no, I need to start being productive, which is like a weird thing for a 13-year-old.
It is strange.
It's like, be a kid. You have so much time to do this, but if you're driven, you're driven.
Yeah, and that seemed he seemed to have gotten the bug pretty early.
Yeah,
I know that he's talked about that actually, I think, in the context of other founders like Patrick Collison,
right,
who is the founder and CEO of Stripe currently. But he was one of those people that also had an early revelation, like, hey, this is something that do we have the heat on right?
it's just the air. It's a little hot in here.
Yeah.
It is like fall in Michigan, but
Yeah.
it's staying hot a little bit longer than it probably should.
Yeah, but it's like, it's beautiful. You see all the colors, all this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like that seems to be something that like turned him on and got him oriented pretty quickly in terms of being productive and exploring some of the themes that he's into right now.
Yep.
Fast forwarding a little bit, he ended up at Harvard for his undergrad. They do that for undergrad and
I think it was Cornell for undergrad.
Cornell for undergrad,
and that was in philosophy, I believe.
Yes, and then he did his master's and his PhD at Harvard
in computer science. Yep.
Yep.
And so that's Ivy League. Like, we're talking some of the top schools.
Yeah.
In the U.S.
Yeah.
And he was born in Europe and then went to school, and I think grew up in the United States. Got into those colleges, and not only went to those colleges, I think he also was in art school for a little bit.
That's right.
At the Rhode Island Design School. Where he nurtured a love of art and painting, and I think he wanted to be an artist coming out of his educational timeline there.
Even like later in life in his essays, a lot of his themes involve his artistic perspective.
Yeah.
I've said this before, but I have a mentor of mine who is pretty clear in his delineation between artists and engineers. They're two different things. And so to have somebody who can draw the parallels between hackers and painters, which I think is a title of one of his books, but it's also a title of one of his essays. Is that, like, you see that theme come up, you see those themes come up a lot, where he's like, okay, I'm contrasting what I learned as a painter and what I learned as a hacker. And there's a lot of different lessons that you can see in both spheres.
I mean, they're both creating, they're just using different means to create.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he gets really, really involved with it in a way where it's not as obvious to the average person.
Right.
For a lot of people, an engineer is one type of way that's portrayed in, you know, the movies, etc. Back office, it's IT, all of it's the same.
Especially like a hacker.
Right.
You know, it's like a very specific person you're looking at.
But then, like, I would almost say to painters or to engineers, painters and artists also have a stereotype or a mold or an archetype that isn't as obvious to, in like the details and the nuances of how painters approach their work aren't as obvious to somebody who might be behind a laptop or a screen for their job.
100%.
But I think, as personally somebody who likes to dabble in like the arts, but also loves technology and engineering, software engineering, but I can appreciate even other forms of engineering. I love that that's something that he highlights, because I don't think it's talked about enough. I look at software as such a creative exercise.
Yeah.
Especially like designing and building and everything, that there's so much to take away and learn from people that are doing the same thing just through a different medium.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's funny how giving both of those kind of like all that background with software engineering and art, he decided, I'm gonna try and be an artist.
Yeah.
He chose one of those paths and was like, I'm gonna see if I can make something of myself in the art world. I think that was right after college.
Yeah.
And I don't think it went very well. I think he was a struggling artist in New York for quite a while.
Before he ended up shifting into technology.
Yeah, I think then there's something where he was just like, I need to start making money. Working contract jobs, doing, I guess job after job, and not really having a solved source of income. He then, took a detour off the arts and went into like more seriously programming, and specifically programming languages. This is in the early 90s when he actually wrote a book on Lisp.
Talk to me about Lisp.
Lisp is a functional programming language. I've written some programs in it. It's fun to learn. It's cool to like see how other people think about programming languages, because they're not all JavaScript, right? And it's not all just, I guess, high-level languages that you just understand everything that's going on. A lot of these are functional languages that are made up of closures. So it's just like function call after function call after function call, and it makes the algorithms look a little bit weird, like almost like ancient Egypt, like hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
But it's also cool to actually like understand what's happening at a lower level, and why they actually are so efficient. And Paul really loves this language. He wrote 1 or 2 books on the language and why they're so important. And then later on in his life has actually come out with other dialects of the language, which is crazy. I love that.
Yeah, and for people that aren't as technical in the software space, programming is essentially a set of instructions that we give a machine to execute. So when we're writing programs, we're essentially writing instructions for this machine to follow. And algorithms are in there because they're a repeatable way of executing a set of instructions, and they're like recipes for programmers or developers to go out there and execute. And you mentioned some things in there like functional programming, etc. These are just different ways that people write instructions
for the computer.
Exactly. And so, for lack of a better term, it's almost like a framework for writing these instructions. Then you use the word function. That's basically like a group of instructions that you can call repeatedly, and you don't have to like rewrite the lines every time. And so very, very high level, very, very layman's description, but it just to kind of bring you into our world a little bit. When we're writing these different programs, or when we're writing different instructions for the computer, this is what we mean. And this is ultimately what brings life to the experience that we have today. When we go on to Facebook, or when we go on to Constance, when we go on to any platform on the web, behind the scenes is essentially a set of instructions that somebody wrote that will react and respond to the interactions that you have on the computer. So
yeah, I think Lisp is, when you look at it, it looks as if it's a functional program. I think it's a multi-paradigm language, but the way I've used it has always been in the purely functional aspects. But yeah, like
I've never written anything in Lisp.
It's a very esoteric language to me. It's very fun, especially if you had like a background in computer science, to get down to like almost like the philosophy of like what do you need to make a complete language, kind of like out the alphabet, right?
Yeah.
What letters do you need to actually form a complete alphabet?
Gotcha.
It's very interesting, but not only did he start writing the Lisp stuff, he also started writing those essays in the early 90s.
Was that in the early 90s, or was that right after they sold?
I believe he started writing the essays before they got popular.
Okay.
But they only became popular after they sold his second company, which is important to note.
Yeah, so let's get into that. So
they started one company that did not pop off.
Right. Yeah. Which is like par for the course for a lot of entrepreneurs and startup founders.
And this was late 90s, early 2000s, where he thought, and his team thought, hey, maybe we could build websites for art galleries to showcase what products they have there, and what just what's going on in the art gallery.
Yeah, well, this was in the 90s,
late 90s, right?
For Viaweb. Well, they sold in 1998, and
gotcha.
and so they started building a little bit before that.
Yes.
But yes, it was basically an early version of Shopify.
Well, so this was before Viaweb. They had this like art gallery project, and then that was like that didn't do so well. Right. A lot of people were like, nah, we'd rather have people come in person to see this art rather than having it online. And they were like, all right, we need to change up what we're doing.
Right, and then they shifted into
Viaweb. Yes,
or Viaweb.
Sure.
But essentially, it was an early version of Shopify, where
essentially
people, and they called themselves like the first application service provider. But essentially, what they did is they helped people set up online shops, online stores.
Not too different from Constance.
Not too different. And it's crazy how these ideas repeat. It's a version of e-commerce. Obviously, they have a different approach in how they set up shop. The how is different, but the what is still similar, where people need to transact, and the web makes it very easy. And essentially, the name of the company, Viaweb, is saying like you can do this all the web using the web.
I love that.
It's very direct in the name. But they essentially grew that.
That was a success.
And they sold that to Yahoo, and this eventually became Yahoo's store.
Right.
But they sold it to Yahoo in 1998 for about $49 million worth of shares in the company. Yeah. Yahoo was active back then, because if we go back to the Mark Cuban episode that we did earlier, they also made that purchase of broadcast.com.
That's right.
So they were essentially just, selling to everybody around this time and making all these people rich. But
they were trying to acquire and beat Google, who was kicking their butt in terms of search space and, visitors. But yeah, there's a lot of lore there. There's a lot of like Yahoo helped the entire bubble kind of, come into being. So
they created it.
I don't want to say that, but like
they were solely responsible for the .com burst because, but they were very active in their acquisitions early.
Yeah,
they were the people to sell to. It seems like. But that put him in a different stratosphere where he could start gaining some breathing room and really start focusing on the things that he wanted to focus on.
Yeah, I think shortly after that, I believe he met Jessica Livingston, who is now his wife.
His boo.
Yes.
Main squeeze.
And that was early 2000s, I believe.
Yeah.
I believe he met her at a house party at his house, which, you know, that's what you do, right? When you sell your company, you start throwing house parties.
Yeah. One of those Silicon Valley tech parties, huh?
And then very shortly after meeting him and his other co-founders from Viaweb, kind of the four of them, decided, let's do YC.
Okay.
Let's actually sit down and let's help other startup founders achieve their dreams with guidance, with money, with a network of things that can help people succeed. And that was in 2005, I want to say.
Co-founded 2005.
Yeah.
Startup Accelerator that has since become one of the most successful and influential in Silicon Valley, helping launch companies such as, and we went through this earlier, Airbnb, Dropbox, Reddit, Instacart, DoorDash, Stripe, Twitch, amongst many others.
That's right. Yeah, the 2005, that doesn't seem too long ago. I guess it's been 20 years.
20
but it's
years,
at least it's in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And that's the exciting part. Some of these founders that we talk about, their accomplishments or their companies have gone and passed. But this is something that's happening today.
Yeah.
You know, they do batches, like you said, 4 times a year.
And so they've seen their growth. They've seen like their growth and their trajectory. I think YC, I've had 2 numbers, but I think YC has funded over 5,000 companies.
Sounds right.
And then Paul Graham, I think specifically, was a different number that might have been higher. But no, that's like a lot. They've been active in the space, and they've been doing.
They have some good returns too.
Do you have any barometer on those returns?
I don't. They're online, at least for some of the unicorns that they've been able to back.
And so if I can pull anything up right
yeah,
here.
go for it. Getting into these companies at such an early stage means that when they do become a unicorn, which is $1 billion, right? You make a large return on that investment. And the whole goal of an accelerator is to find the most amount of unicorns. They take a lot of swings to do that, but when you can find 1 or 2 or 10 that they have, you get hugely outsized returns. And that's kind of the whole point.
And the company's success metric is the founders that get rich, because when they get a really successful company, then that's, again, their marker of success, and that's allows them to attract more people. They really saw a steep takeoff around the pandemic. That's something that happened. But even backtracking a little bit, a notable name that's come out of YC is Sam Altman.
Yes.
The current founder, CEO of OpenAI.
Yeah, and he was actually the president or chairman of YC after Paul stepped down.
Yeah, he went through an early batch. Yeah, I think in 2005.
One of the first ones, yeah.
And then he saw some success, but then he came back and he was eventually the appointed president after Paul Graham retired in 2014.
Yeah, and this whole time, ever since like Viaweb, maybe a little bit before Viaweb, and up until the current day, as you're watching this, Paul writes these essays.
Yeah.
And that's actually part of what makes him so cool to learn about, is the fact that he puts his thoughts on the internet. I would say, every 3 months?
Yeah.
He's got an essay?
In long form.
And you can see some of that artistic ability come out. He's a very good writer.
Yeah.
And he also cares a lot about writing. And so that's just like a really good portal into his thoughts that are happening every day. And I think we have a couple of those essays that we'll go through here in a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we can jump into that right now.
Yeah.
But before we do, the thing that's really interesting about a lot of his essays is they definitely apply to founders, and so there's a lot of game and there's a lot of nuggets, isms that you can take from there and apply directly to the startup ecosystem, especially if you are a startup founder. But he has other essays in there that just get you thinking about how to spend your time and how to
philosophy. Philosophy. A lot of it's philosophy.
I say philosophy. We could say philosophy, but I hesitate to use that word to make the point that I'm trying to make right now, because I think that goes more into the whole like Kant and stuff like that, where I'm saying, okay, there are just practical lessons in terms of how do you do what you love? Like, how do you find what to work on? And there'll be step-by-step things there, or like, how do you write something? How do you take your ideas and put them into words? And those are things that they're backed by philosophy. Like, he's thought deeply about these ideas, and I think you can tell when you read his writing, but it's put in such a clear way. Like, he doesn't have these long, drawn out, meandering paragraphs that don't lead anywhere. He has very clear, actionable pieces of advice that when you look out into the world, you can point and you can see. You can say, oh, I see what he's saying there. I see how that idea played out here. Oh, he called this problem out and I'm running into it right now. Got it. And so there's just a lot of practical wisdom in there. It's free, it's available, and it's helpful. But I think even if you're not a startup founder, there's a lot to be gleaned from the stuff that he's put out there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The only reason I would say philosophy is because when I read those essays personally, it's really good advice just to like live your life. And like you said, you can point to examples that are happening in the real world, but it's also abstract enough where it's like, this can work for anybody reading it. You don't have to be a startup founder to do this. Like, it's just like, use your rational mind to come up to these conclusions, how, really to do anything. But whatever he's trying to get at in terms of like, is it, either follow your curiosity, build something people want, how to think about a problem the right way. Like, they can be applied not just to startups, like you were saying, they can be applied to pretty much any situation. Yeah. To me, it's really about how do you think rationally. It's kind of the entire ecosystem of his essays. But no, super good stuff. And like you said, it's free.
It's free.
Y'all should be reading that stuff. And we'll drop a couple of those in the comments.
It's out there.
So the essays are like really good. Do you want to jump into a couple of those essays right now?
Yeah, let's do it. Let me pull up. We both looked at a couple different essays right here. Yeah. What's one that stuck out to you, and we can start?
I can start with one that I saw that was around startups. Like, it was a theme for startups, and like we were saying, some of these are, but it was titled "How Not to Die."
How not to die.
The reason I like this is because it gives like some pretty good antidotes in terms of like, when do startups actually fail? Why did they fail? And how can you prevent that? One of the things he says in that article is like, if somebody's working on a startup, it's very, very rare that a startup will fail in mid keystroke. If you are building something, if you are trying to get it out to people, it's very rare that a startup would fail mid keystroke. And that, I think, is important. He also says it's very rare that a company who's making a lot of deals, who has a lot of meetings, who is actually interacting with their customers, fails because, their ISP calls out their bill, or their cloud provider calls their bill. It's like, no, we're going to make this happen because we're doing a lot of things that are moving the business forward. And so it's very rare that a startup dies that way. Startups actually die when you run out of money, or one of the important co-founders leaves.
Yeah, those are like the two underlying reasons that they see there. I'm going to read a couple excerpts from there that kind of back up what you're saying, but they can also create a couple different threads that we can run down. But this is like the core that I think you're pointing out, is when it says, when startups die, the official cause of death is always either running out of money or a critical founder bailing.
Yep.
Often the two occur simultaneously. But I think the underlying cause is usually that they've become demoralized.
Exactly.
You rarely hear of a startup that's working around the clock, doing deals and pumping out new features, and dies because they can't pay their bills and their ISP unplugs their server.
Right.
And so that's like right there. But I think it kind of does point to that idea of the demoralization.
That is the nugget of the entire essay, which is just don't get demoralized. Instead of don't get defeated, it's don't get demoralized.
Yeah. And another thing too that he points out in that essay is a lot of times people give up because they're become demoralized. And
Yes.
he wrote this at I guess they have a series of guests that come in every night for the last week. And then the last night is a party, so nobody really speaks. But before, he was like, okay, I think that I can write or give some words of wisdom that can help these startups as they go into their next phase. And this is where this was born from, is something, a lecture that he gave on the last night of a cohort that they had.
Yeah, that I really like that. And that theme comes off quite a bit in some of these essays. There's another one that I was looking at.
Well, let's hang on this one for a little bit more, because I just have a couple.
Do you have another thread in there that we might want to?
Yep. There's too much in here. That's one thing that me and Jake are talking about a lot, is there's just so much wisdom that are in these essays. It feels like it shouldn't be just open like this, especially all organized the way that it is. But something that he said here is, another feeling that seems alarming but is in fact normal in a startup is the feeling that what you're doing isn't working. The reason you can expect to feel this is that what you do probably won't work. Startups almost never get it right the first time. Much more commonly, you launch something and no one cares. Don't assume when this happens that you failed. That's normal for startups, but don't sit around doing nothing. Iterate.
Right.
And I think that feeling is something that can be that's real, especially out of context. When you get that feeling, especially when you've associated that feeling of, I like to think of it as being energized. I like to feel of it, like to think of it as being alive, doing something that I enjoy doing.
Yep.
But early on, it can feel like nerves, especially when somebody doesn't clearly articulate saying, hey, this is okay. This is normal. Don't let that prevent action though. And don't stop. Continue to refine and get better.
Yeah, it's not Paul Graham's quote, but the quote that I like that encapsulates that, I think, really well, is Elon, when he says, running a startup is kind of like staring into the abyss and chewing glass. You know, it's like, you never know if this thing is actually going to work out.
Yeah.
But you have to continuously take things that are going to be the tough things that you have to do, and keep moving forward. That's like the biggest thing, is just to keep moving forward.
Keep moving forward. Another person that often talks from that frame is Phil Knight. That's why I really liked his autobiographies, because he doesn't shy away from that. A lot of times, especially in today's culture, we go online and we just see the highlights. If it's not the person only posting their highlights, it's the social media algorithms that are only showing you those highlights. Partially because as people, we like to see the highlights.
Yeah.
But the lowlights, the things that you don't see, are really how the sausage is made, and that's how we ultimately end up getting these big platforms. But I think having somebody articulate it as clearly as that and as honestly as that, especially with his authority, in the sense that he's just worked with so many startups, it becomes something that is important not to dismiss or forget.
100%.
Because you will run into a situation where doubt enters, but it's how you deal with the doubt that's more important. It's not that you want to avoid it, it's how you deal with it.
It's also important to show that that's a theme that every startup goes through. You never just launch something and everyone's just like, oh, I found this organically and it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like, it takes time, and you're never going to get it right on the first try.
Yeah. So let me say another thing that I thought was pretty interesting here.
Okay.
From that essay. He goes, let me mention some things not to do. Let me mention some things not to do. The number one thing not to do is other things. If you find yourself saying a sentence that ends with, but we're going to keep working on the startup, you're in big trouble. Bob's going to grad school, but we're going to keep working on the startup. We're moving back to Minnesota, but we're going to keep working on the startup. We're taking on consulting projects, but we're going to keep working on the startup. You may as well just translate these to, we're giving up on the startup, but we're not willing to admit that to ourselves, because that's what it means most of the time. A startup is so hard that working on it can't be preceded by but.
And that's, I think, another reason why in the YC application, which we've submitted a couple times, they ask you, are you willing to work on this full time?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, we don't want you to be serving too many masters here. It's like, you need to have, or was it serving too many gods, two different gods?
I think
whatever.
Both work there,
you're going the wrong way down a one way.
Yeah. The wrong way down the one way.
Almost got full on collision there.
Yeah. Ironically, we are the people that are recording the podcast, and this person's just driving. My God.
Anyway,
what is happening?
I
think people just forget to drive sometimes. Like,
that's a really good article. There was any other ones in that article? I wanted to jump into the next article, which I have, which actually dovetails beautifully because it was what you'll wish you'd known.
I do have one more thing in there, but just kind of talking about kind of talking on that last thing right there is let me mention some things not to do. So that's something that I think requires a little bit of nuance, because when you look at, like, for instance, like us, we're doing a podcast right now.
Right.
I think context matters. Doing it in the context of the startup is the most important thing.
Yes.
It's not I'm doing this, but it's I'm doing this for.
And
I think about Airbnb when they were making the cereals and all that stuff. Like,
oh yeah,
that was a slight deviation, but everything was more like, okay, how do we keep the lights on for this main thing right here? And so I think being able to honestly try to connect the dots between what you're doing, this thing that might not be directly related, but connecting the dots in terms of how it can benefit it in an honest way, I think is really important. So
yeah, and that's something we'll talk about in the super secret too, is just around like the service oriented SaaS.
Yeah, I also think
that works.
I also think it fits into the aspect of doing things that don't scale, which I think is like another thing, because he does talk about how you kind of have to do things that aren't immediately obvious to the outcome, but do pay like dividends because of the byproduct of what you're learning along the way of doing things that are not necessarily directly what you would love to be doing in your final form.
Yep.
But help you get to that final form.
100%.
But the thing that I do think is worth calling out in the whole how not to die is one of the most interesting things we've discovered from working on Y Combinator is that founders are more motivated by the fear of looking bad than by the hope of getting millions of dollars. So if you want to get millions of dollars, put yourself in a situation where failure will be public and humiliating.
Yeah.
So
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Build in public. Show people what you're doing.
He gave this example of somebody who was on Newsweek magazine, had this shirt like future billionaire. He was like, his mom probably cut out a little clipping, put it on the fridge. His ex-girlfriend probably saw it. His friends probably saw it. So it's like, you don't have any reason to not fail.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if he was actually successful or not, but either he was extremely humiliated and took that into whatever he did next, or he had a degree of success that he wouldn't have had he not done that. And Paul was very adamant about how important that is he was like, I am sure that the failure rate would decrease, the success rate would increase if more people were very open about the leap that they were taking.
I also like really wholeheartedly agree with that. I really don't like seeing people that are like, oh, I'm in a stealth startup.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing? Like, that doesn't, 9 times out of 10, no one is going to steal your idea, and it's only going to be better if you build in public. Most of the time, what I've seen is that people just aren't really working on anything.
Yeah.
Or they're not really doing it in a way that other people would want, and so they're just going to call it stealth startup and just going to hide from the public.
Yeah. But
What's wild, and this is something else to clock here, is we've only gone through one essay.
Yeah.
We've only gone through one essay.
Oh my God, I have notes on all these different essays.
I know, we're coming up on 40 minutes.
Oh jeez, why don't we go through do things that don't scale, and then we'll call it. I'll call that one.
We can do that, because do things that don't scale is also like an iconic essay, one of the famous ones.
Yes, yeah. Let me see if I can pull up my notes. Do you have anything on your thoughts right there?
Do things that don't scale. One of my favorite stories for doing things that don't scale, well, honestly, is the Snapchat one.
Yeah.
That one and Reddit. But basically, like, doing things that you know won't work out in the long term for your business. Not in terms of like, will they work or not, but like, should you be spending your time on? And so one of those examples is like getting, let's say, Snapchat out the door. To get Snapchat working, people had to go, the founders had to go in person to meet people and say, hey, would you like to join our app and take a photo that disappears?
Yeah.
You know, it's like they didn't do social media campaigns, they didn't do billboards. I mean, those came eventually.
Yeah.
But they were doing one-on-one meetings with people. Same with Stripe, right? They would get one-on-one meetings with potential customers, and if the customer said, yeah, we'd love to sign up with Stripe, he would say, give me your laptop.
Right now.
Give me your laptop right now, we'll do this. And obviously, when you're running a business that's supposed to be, even at the national level, you can't be meeting with every single one of your customers because it just doesn't scale.
Yeah.
You need to have things that scale, but to get started, you need to be doing the things that don't scale, and that brings so many benefits that he outlines in the essay.
100%. And the aspect of doing things that don't, so scale is becoming more and more commonplace, but in the tech world, it's a big thing because, especially in software.
And I guess, what do we mean by scale, right?
And it's like, does this same idea, the same recipe work on a small scale, so with a few people, but then also on a larger scale when we scale up the amount of traffic and people that we'll be working with?
Well, to me, it also means if you put 1 unit of work in, how many units of output are you getting? In a 1-to-1 scale, you put 1 unit of work in, you get 1 unit out. If you scale that, you might be able to put 1 unit of work in and get 10 units of output.
Yeah.
And those processes and the things that you're doing allow you to make that scale happen. But
and so we think about that a lot of times in software.
Yes.
Because when we're designing good software, you tend to realize that, okay, when I'm doing it for maybe a small group of users, 10 people, does this work? But
Right.
if I'm doing it for 100,000 people,
much different.
it's exactly. And so we design for scale a lot of times, but that's not always the best way to approach a business.
Exactly.
The software, yes, you want it to be able to fit that, but a lot of times we put the cart before the horse, and we miss the idea that the fact that we got to get the people first to be able to even get to the point where your software can support a larger scale of users.
A good, like, concrete example of that is like YouTube. If you built YouTube just for one person to watch, you'd build it one way. If you were building it for everybody in the world to watch, you'd build it very differently.
Yeah.
But you have to start somewhere. And that's what this whole essay is about.
And we see that in other businesses too, where people will be thinking about the end destination, and that's smart because you want to know where you're going. But if you let it prevent immediate action, then it becomes a problem, and that actually happens more times than not.
Yeah, not even, and it's not even preventing action. Sometimes it's leading you down the wrong path. When you start taking actions that you're trying to set yourself up for this future success, but you're just future-proofing something that shouldn't be future-proofed.
Yeah.
You need to be proving out the idea at a small scale first, and then saying, now that we've proven this out, we can then scale it.
Exactly. So some excerpts that I have from the idea of do things that don't scale. Almost all startups are fragile initially, and that's one of the biggest things inexperienced founders and investors and reporters and know-it-alls on forums get wrong about them. They unconsciously judge early startups by the standards of established ones. They're like someone looking at a newborn baby and concluding, there's no way this tiny creature could ever accomplish anything. So it just talks about that early fragile nature there.
We see that a lot in the Detroit ecosystem, I feel like. There's
Okay,
so
go
many
on then.
people that are saying, oh, you have a startup? Okay, like, how much traction do you have? How many users do you have? And it's not like, oh, you've got a couple hundred, couple thousand, like that's good enough. No, they want like hundreds of thousands of users.
Yeah.
They want millions of dollars in revenue. And I'm like, that's not a pre-seed venture. That's something else. You guys are looking for different qualifications and not realizing that what we have could actually be the thing that changes the world.
And you know what's, so we should jump, when we get into super secret in a little bit, let's go into some of the fundraising essays.
Yes.
Because I think that speaks a lot to that testament right there.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll that'll be on Constance later. So if you just go to Constance /C/Founders Drive, that's the direct link. We'll have a link in the comments. But if you also go to in the link in the comments in the description and you click that link, it'll take you to Constance and you'll see the Founders Drive. It's free, it's open. Of course, we talked about this earlier. We're building Constance, and we're trying to show people that, hey, when you talk about things that you're interested in, us, we like to talk about businesses and founders and the entrepreneurial journey, especially in the tech space. But talking about that, you can find an audience and you can build a community that can eventually help you build a business. But it's also true if you care about diet and nutrition, if you're a person that teaches music. Teachers are actually, taking a side quest a little bit, teachers are very, 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 should be thriving in this industry.
Should be. Because
you're a communicator of knowledge, and we live in a world where knowledge is such a powerful commodity when presented in the right way. Of course, you can find the answer to any problem out there, but trust isn't there. That's becoming more and more scarce. I was watching a podcast with Tim Ferriss. He said credibility is becoming a more and more scarce but valuable resource. And so as a teacher, you have a way of delivering information, and it can be about anything. It could be about cars. I know that's something that you're talking about more, creativity. And another thing, a little bit of game in this whole industry is overlaying different interests that you have.
Yes.
Because if you're somebody who talks about business, but you also put a psychological aspect twist on it, that's kind of what I'm exploring with my content, then that becomes something that's more unique. And then if you add into the element that there's a unique person delivering that information, it becomes even more unique. And so check out Constance. We'll be talking a little bit more about the fundraising and these Paul Graham ideas. But back to regularly scheduled programming, doing things that don't scale.
That's like I said, it's a famous essay. And if you guys are interested in some of these other essays, I would definitely check them out. There's so much good stuff in there.
So a couple things to add to this episode here. It's harmless if reporters and know-it-alls dismiss your startup. They always get things wrong. It's even okay if investors dismiss your startup. They'll change their minds when they see growth. The big danger is that you'll dismiss your startup yourself. I've seen it happen. I often have to encourage founders who don't see the full potential of what they're building. Even Bill Gates made that mistake. He returned to Harvard for the fall semester after starting Microsoft. He didn't stay long, but he wouldn't have returned at all if he realized Microsoft was going to be even a fraction of the size it turned out to be.
100%.
It's a big one. That's a big one. Do not give up on yourself. Doesn't mean that what you have is the ultimate way, but it might mean that you just have to refine what you're doing and continue down that path. The first idea that you have isn't going to be the last one. I've said this a lot of times, man. People will say you don't need a plan B if you have a plan A, and I'm like, that's stupid advice, and that's terrible. The way of thinking about it is, have your end goal in mind. It might be, I just want to be rich, and then have several plans to get to that end goal. Have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. It might not be the path that you specifically thought about, but if you're clear enough in the end goal that you want to get to, you can have multiple paths of getting there. A lot of people will be like, I don't want to work a job or whatever. It's like, okay, that's fine. But it doesn't mean that the path is the path that you have in your head right now. It might be a different avenue or a different lane. And so I think that's something to keep in mind, is like, don't give up on your ideas. And then the side aspect of it is also understand that it's okay to have a plan B. Just know what your plan B is for. Know what your plan C is for. You should have multiple plans of getting towards the end state that you want.
Oh, absolutely. I like that.
Another thing here is, question to ask at an early stage startup is not, is this company taking over the world, but how big could this company get if the founders did the right thing? And the right things often seem both laborious and inconsequential at the time.
And that's only, I feel like, something you learn through practice. You know, going through these episodes of, what do I have to do? What's the next possible thing I can do to really make sure that we stay alive?
There's so much stuff here. My God.
There really is.
Let me see if I can just maybe pull one or two out, and then we'll just like transition into the to the other. And we'll finish off with the do things that don't scale, and then maybe get to
we'll probably have to do more parts to some of these essays. And we might just even put out a couple of videos just talking about the essays. And what we think about them. Just because there is so much game here that we feel like a lot of other people can learn from. And they're just not, because they're not aware of it.
Because we, like, these are things on giving up. And in terms of, like, the doing things that don't scale, making your customers happy is a big thing that he said. You should take extraordinary measures, not just to acquire users, but also to make them happy.
Yes, delight your users.
Delight your users. That's a big thing that he talks about.
Build something people want.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just build something.
build stuff for yourself, and then increase the radius a little bit more.
Yep.
One is that a lot of startup founders are trained as engineers, and customer service is not part of the training of engineers.
Very true.
Another reason founders don't focus enough on individual customers is that they worry it won't scale. But when founders of, he says, larval startups worry about this, I point out that in the current state, they have nothing to lose. Maybe if they go out of their way to make existing users super happy, they'll one day have too many to do so much for. That would be a great problem to have.
Yeah.
See if you can make it happen. And incidentally, when it does, you'll find that delighting customers scales better than you ever expected. Partly because you can usually find ways to make anything scale more than you would have predicted. And partly because delighting customers will by then have permeated your culture. And that's something, it's a good habit. That's essentially what he's saying.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a good habit to have. And technology, especially as engineers, is not the only thing you have to scale. It's actually the most important thing is keeping the customer happy.
I like that.
So what do we have right now? Is that,
we're at 50 minutes, if that's okay.
Let's keep this one under an hour. We got a little bit more time here, right?
Of course.
All right. I've never seen a startup, that was another one.
Is that the same
Same thing, don't
essay?
don't scale. I've never once seen a startup lured down a blind alley by trying too hard to make their initial users happy. Then this is what he said that I think is really interesting. That's one advantage of being small. You can provide a level of service no big company can. It's not in a big company's interest to do these things that don't scale because they are already at scale. And so we have a competitive advantage being small. Yeah. You get one-on-one time with
insights,
the people that are building it. You get the feedback that other people just don't get.
I also like the visualization of leading somebody down a dark alley. He's used that a couple of times in his essays, just to illustrate that point. But it also, I think, goes back to the fact that he is such a good writer that he'll be able to put that kind of imagery and use his artistic expression in a lot of these essays.
Yeah. So there are some practical things here, but I think that we can jump over to our super secret, finish off the don't scale, and then get into how to raise money. That's a big one in working with investors. It's kind of a space that we're in, and even reading through some of these essays, I was like, okay, we need to actually take this advice directly.
Oh yeah.
And so that's something that we'll get into, and then the do things that don't scale. Again, this is on constance.com/C/founders drive, but if you just go to constance.com, it's not too hard to find your way around there. And do you have anything else for this?
I don't think so. I think Paul is still alive and still doing great work, and so he still has a lot of life left to change the world even more, which is insane. But that also means that we'll be able to revisit this multiple times, and just keep it up to date. As he continues to do his great work.
Cool. All right, Joe.
See you next week.
Peace.